Zoning map amendment from A1 to I1 and a special use permit for a truck terminal in Joliet Township, commonly known as County Board District 8, vacant property on Cherry Hill Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zoning case ZC-19-036 takes place in Joliet Township, and there are two requests as part of this case: a map amendment from A1 to I1 and a special use permit for a truck terminal. The property is currently unimproved along Cherry Hill Road. It is a little over 14 acres. The special use area is 9.63 acres. So in the site plan that you saw as part of the packet, the truck terminal area, the special use area, is on the northern part of the property. To the south of the property and also closest to the roadway, the applicant is proposing just to build a industrial small warehouse building, so just an I-1 permitted as of right use. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last week, we did not have any objectors present to these requests. Staff did recommend approval of the map amendment request, but I wanted to have a point of clarification here because it says that in your the statement of facts that staff recommended approval of the special use permit. Staff had actually recommended that the special use request be tabled or continued until we receive more information about the truck's impact to Cherry Hill Road. Cherry Hill Road in that area is under the jurisdiction of the Joliet Township Highway Commissioner, and we did not receive any formal comments from him about this request, about anything that might be required, perhaps a turning lane, for example, as part of this development. So we had stated that if they should recommend approval of the special use permit, we would recommend those three conditions as part of it. And one of those conditions, number 2, is related to comments that we received from the Forest Preserve District, which has property directly adjacent, so to the west, the Sugar Creek Preserve. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the map amendment and then also of that special use permit with those 3 conditions. And I can answer any questions that you might have.
Motion to concur with the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I'll make the second.
Okay, my question is with the Township Highway Commissioner, I know that they were going through a process of replacing it. How did that timing work? Like, was the new Highway Commissioner in place when, whenever there's changeover? But do you know how that, I don't know if you can answer that.
Sure, and the applicant could speak to this as well. But when the proposal and the request first came about, that would have been under the old Township Highway Commissioner. The applicant had reached out, had spoken with him, and then obviously as this process is going along and we're getting closer to the public hearing date, the new Township Highway Commissioner comes into place. And he was the one who was actually notified of the zoning request. So they were both aware of it. And it's my understanding that the Township Highway Commissioner, in his conversations with the applicant, has said, I will go to the site, I will evaluate what's going to be needed, and you're basically going to have to do whatever it is that I'm going to require. Obviously, in order for us, the land use department, to issue that building permit or that site development permit, their approval is required.
Okay, Mary Jo?
Did the city make any other notifications? They have in here from the letter about the tax, the trucks being a significant impact on the local roads, and the city staff currently is exploring the feasibility of payment in lieu of taxes or pilot program to pay for these. Did they talk about when that might take place or how that would affect this property?
They did not.
And one more quick question. So last time we looked at the truck terminal, there was, we talked about the noise barriers in the berm. Did the staff recommend anything like this? Or because what did they do?
In this particular site, the property that is to the west is the Forest Preserve property. So their comments in that letter, they were really just concerned about the quality of the water leaving the site to get into their preserve. So that's why we have that condition. Any sort of outdoor storage is going to be required to be screened from any and all properties. To the north is actually an industrial condo development. And then to the south, sort of southwest, I would say, is the Estes truck terminal. So this truck terminal will be screened from another truck terminal. Across the street, though, is a large agricultural residential parcel, so they would also be required to screen from that.
Okay, so there's no mitigating factors from air pollution? I mean, screening could be a chain link fence.
Correct, with cements, yes. But there will be landscaping required as part of the development, too, based on the size of the development.
Tom?
Of the three conditions, I don't see anything that talks about the highway commission. Should we add a fourth condition that they would comply with the highway commissioner's requirements?
If the committee would like to stress that point, the highway commissioner approval will be required as part of both the site development permit and also the building permit, though.
So we don't need a condition?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Any other committee members? We did have somebody sign up to speak on this. I'm not going to even try the last name because I'm not going to insult you. Tom, if you'd like to.
Mr. Chairman, Gavin, the attorney on the case.
Want to come down to the podium? Foster. Sorry. That's all right. I always
whole life.
I try to not insult people, so.
No, that's fine. Tom Osterberger, 111 North Ottawa Street. I'm the attorney for the applicant. A little history. Jim and Mary Lou Gask own about 60 acres. About 4 years ago, they sold to Estes Trucking. Jim was sick at the time, passed away, and Mary Lou is now the only owner. Estes Trucking went into the city of Joliet, created the terminal you know there at 52 in Laramie. Estes Trucking would not, as hard as we tried, buy this portion north. It's mainly floodplain, they didn't want it, and so the gas decided to go ahead and sell it to them. And they left this piece orphaned in between Estes Trucking and up against the industrial. So several people looked at it, came to the county, nothing ever happened. Finally, I told Mary Lou that I would consider buying it. I do a lot in the industrial area, but we needed to get it rezoned. So it is naturally an industrial piece. If you see the aerial to the north, it's all industrial. Estes Trucking is to the south, it's a little bit further away. The special use for the trucking is because there are a lot of small truck repair and truck guys who cannot afford what the large, the Estes and other large people have. They need a place to go. But when you look at this site, I talked to Jim Monfio and to Mike Turnbull, the Joliet Township Highway Commissioner. And Mike did tell me, we'll meet you at the site. Whatever I require is what you're going to have to do. I don't have a problem with the use. We just need to make sure that the entry permit is correct. I want to point out, I agree with everything in Janine's report. I think it's the right place. It's the right place for a small user. We're close to where they need to be. We're close to the highway. But when I applied for the special use, because we can only develop in the floodplain what we can develop, I didn't want to try to determine what that is. There's a lot of floodplains. This ultimately is only going to be 4 acres or less of usable space. Unfortunately, we paid for the 9.5 just so that we could do everything north of the creek. but it is not going to be anywhere near that. And the site plan will determine what it is, and the engineers are holding up to do that site plan if we get approved.
I did notice on the map, the blue part, at least I think I'm on the right case. I looked at a number of these in the last day, and it's not my neighborhood, but I thought it said like a 1% chance of flood. If there was a 1% something like that on there. And if it didn't flood this year, I figure it probably will never flood.
Yeah.
This year was pretty bad wet.
Yeah, I would say it's currently being farmed by a local farmer who does a nice job. He only pays for about half of the acres. But regardless, there can be no development in the floodplain, no structures, no paving. So again, the ultimate area used will be much, much less.
Yeah, I see. I mean, really, it's not even half the property, if I'm looking at this correctly. And even the part you can use, it looks like there's a creek that runs through that.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know what this really means, but it says 1% annual chance flood hazard.
So that's the 1% floodplain is a 100-year floodplain.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So 100
But much, there are other portion, the creek, there's a lot of that that's not even going to come close to being developed.
Right. And it just talked about you had to have vegetation along that edge to mitigate anything.
So we do need to screen, and the Forest Preserve, prior to the Forest Preserve sending the letter over, I talked to Geotech about what kind of vegetative screens we can do. Nobody wants to contaminate everything. I have other industrial properties with truck. I told Planning Commission, I just had a tenant, asked the tenant to leave. He had been there 14 years. It just got more and more. He wasn't handling the property correctly. It's not acceptable to have a creek polluted because you're not doing the minor things that need to take place. With respect to traffic, I had an expert last time, a small trucking company in the area, about a quarter mile away, come in to talk about the traffic. When we talk about terminals, we think about an Estes all day long, trucks in, trucks out. This is technically a truck terminal, and I always talk to staff about what we're doing with the trucks. If you have trucks there and you send them out in the morning and they come back at night, that's a truck terminal. It doesn't matter any longer that you're dispatching. You can dispatch from another country, but they're there. They're essentially parking at night. They're going out in the morning, coming back. The building would be for repair, but it wouldn't be in and out all day long. That's not how these operations work. So they go out in the morning, we would just double the number of trips, and that would be it. The area, as you know, to the north, Joliet and New Lenox have Cherry Hill Park. The farm across the street that was mentioned, God bless them if they continue to farm. I think eventually, the way the trend is, that will probably end up being industrial. So again, the point of our application was to allow a small user. There are several small users that I have in mind. None of the small guys can commit to anything until it's up. They can't afford to make a commitment 6-8 months in advance of something being ready to go. So
you talked about, you started talking about the traffic study. I mean, it is in the report that this is an over-trafficked area, especially for roads, and that the roads have been impacted by the trucks, and these roads do need to be widened. At this point, there isn't a plan to widen them. Also, when we pass the zoning, even though this particular operation you're saying isn't going to be coming in and out, once it's zoned that way, it could be sold, and then that could become an issue of trucks going in and out all day. So could you talk to, when you talk about traffic?
Sure. So Janine is very cautious and wants what's best for the area, and I didn't blame her for asking for a traffic study. However, as Mr. White said at the Plan Commission, former Teamster knows the trucking business. You do not have trucks coming in and out all day. We could have trucks coming in and out of an industrial area all day, but with respect to the terminals, an owner-operator cannot make a living by having trucks come back. It makes no sense for them to come back to their location. This is a glorified parking lot for them to stay overnight. You would have no reason to come back to the facility unless you were repairing it.
Under current ownership, the ones that...
No, that has to do with the size. So Estes Trucking is a long terminal, cross-dock. Things come in, trucks come in, They might change cargo, they go back out. This is a repair shop where somebody owns a truck. The one client that I have right now does repair work, 2 hardworking Mexican-American guys. All they seem to do is work, and they have trucks. And I've explained to them, you can only, the repair work in certain communities you can do, but you can't have the trucks. Other places you need other requirements for the trucks, but they have trucks that go out in the morning, come back at night. They literally cannot park on their truck repair place because they need the special use for what we call a terminal, but it's not really a terminal.
So you started off by saying that it was owned by a woman who was looking to sell it, and you wanted it to be zoned before it was sold.
So her name is Mary Lou Gast. We had several people, we sold the balance of her property, we had several people come and look at it, but they wouldn't undertake to have it rezoned due to the cost. So
once it's sold, I mean, are you guaranteeing this business is going to stay there? Are they buying the business?
So I'm buying the property from her,
okay, and
I'm going to develop it. We can never guarantee, even if, for example, Estes Trucking could sell to another trucking company.
Right, that is my concern, though.
Yeah, but it's the nature of the property which dictates the use.
Right.
So if you see on the site plan currently has 2 buildings. One is going to be a 10 to 15,000 square foot building. We added another building solely in case the user in the future wants to have truck parts, the sale of truck parts. In all likelihood, the building will be 10 to 12,000 square feet. That would be 3 bays for truck repair, and then the truck parking or terminal to go out in the morning. It doesn't make a difference who would own that facility. It wouldn't change the use. It's too confined and
But looking
constrained.
at this, though, I would say the site map use is best used for floodplain and agriculture. Other than the industrial to the north and this truck terminal to the left, the rest of it around it is agriculture, and there is a floodplain there. And
But you're surrounded by industrial, right? And the
I wouldn't say you're
owner,
surrounded by it.
well, you're surrounded on the south by Estes Trucking,
Okay.
to the north, industrial. And if you go up the road, up Cherry Hill Road, you have more and more industrial, and that's the trend in the area. So while I have no problem saying that it's good to preserve farmland, we have an owner of a piece of property that is can only rent about half of the acres to a farmer. And so when we talk about highest and best use, in this location, it wouldn't be ag.
I just have one more question. Would their entrance be on Cherry Hill Road, or would it be on Muriel Court?
So Muriel Court is actually an easement across the southern end of those lots. It's not an actual dedicated roadway. It's not even a driveway. Now, it is a physically very nice road, but there's a small strip of property between this parcel and that.
Can't see that very well from this map. Because I was wondering, like, if you came in off of Cherry Hill, you saw that creek there, would you build some sort of bridge to get to the other part of the property that's dry, that's not in the floodplain?
So the other entrance, on the triangle to the south, there would be a separate entrance. Here, I contacted the person who owns this strip of property and said, look, I'd be interested in buying it. And he said, well, let's see what happens. So coming off of Muriel Court would be possible. Last week, Bruce Schwartz was here from Schwartz Construction. He owns 3 of the industrial properties in that condominium. He's interested in this piece because he has trucks that he needs a place to run them from. And if the gentleman who owns this strip of properties, his name is Lloyd Upsping or something like that, you can see it in the public records. And I contacted him. He said, well, wait and see. And you know, if we can work something out, then you can use Muriel Court if the other owners agree, because again, it is an easement. And I did send everything off to Mike Turnbull, the Joliet Township Commissioner. Again, he looked at it and said, well, whatever I'm going to require, we'll meet out there and go through that then.
So, Herb?
Mr. Chairman, I can pronounce Mr. Osterberger's last name. Only once though, Tom. But I just want you to know that is my Will County Board District 8. There are no objectors. I have talked to Janine and Tom about this project, and me and my colleague are fully supportive of it. And I just want you to know we are supportive. Thank you.
Thanks, Herb. All right, it has been moved and seconded, so All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
We need a separate motion for the special use permit.
Problem, yeah.
I'll make that. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded for the special use permit. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you.
Carries. Next up, we have number 2, zoning case ZC 19-044, which is a special use permit for keeping horses, farm animals, and livestock. Variance for minimum setback for an animal confinement building from 50 feet to 20 feet. Variance for making an accessory building area from 1,800 square feet to 2,734 square feet in Lockport Township, commonly known as 17850 Rosalind Street, County Board District number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ZC 19044 takes place in Lockport Township. The applicant, as you mentioned, is requesting a special use permit for the keeping of horses, farm animals, and livestock to be able to keep one horse on the property. The applicant has requested the special use be applicable to the entire 1.74 acre parcel, as well as transferable to future property owners. In order to house this horse, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved the 2 variances you mentioned to allow for the stable to be located 20 feet off the western property line, as well as increase the accessory building area for the property to 2,734 square feet. The subject property is zoned R1, and within the R1 district, there is a requirement with regards to 1 animal unit per acre. So applied to this parcel, it would be 1.5 animal units, or 1 horse would be allowed should the special use be approved. The subject property is improved already with a single-family residence and garden shed. It has a paved driveway accessing Rosalind Street. And since the property is already improved, staff has found that there are adequate utilities and access to the property. The applicant is not intending to increase any access points to Rosalind. The surrounding area, there is R1 to the east and west. The county board has previously approved special use permits for the keeping of horses, farm animals, livestock to the 2 western adjacent properties in previous zoning cases. And then to the north of the subject property is A1, which is permitted as a break of keeping of animals. To the south, we have Forest Park within the Joliet Park District system, and then R2 single-family residential, which currently is vacant and unimproved. Since there were no objectors present at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and of the agencies that submitted comments, none objected, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously approved the special use permit with the 7 conditions that staff recommended approval for. And with that, I'd be happy.
Second.
Any questions?
Yes.
Jamie?
So, I mean, I couldn't tell from this because there's a lot of nice photos of the area and not a good photo of the, like, map of the area. But I could tell kind of from looking at the road, it's a paved road, maybe gravel paved, or is it blacktop?
I believe it's blacktop.
Okay, it's just awfully white compared to the driveway, so I wasn't really certain. And normally I don't care about how close things are to the road if it's out in the middle of nowhere, and the chances of a road being really developed there in, like, say, the lifetime of the building isn't really good, then it's probably fine. I know living in a very developed community that we have allowed things to be built next to paved roads that are now 6-lane highways, and people's backyards are dang near in the highway. And that was my only concern, because I couldn't tell how close this was to a growing area.
In terms of looking at any improvements from the Bull County transportation plan, there are no improvements for Rosalind Street
Thank you, that's what I needed to know.
at this time.
Any other questions, comments? The applicants did sign up. Do you want to say anything, or?
No, unless you have any
I
questions.
don't have any questions.
All right, well, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Go get your Mr.
Next up, we have number 3, ordinance amending the zoning, ordinance adopted September 9, 1947 for zoning case ZC-19-044, 2022-053, which is a map amendment from A1 to R2A in Crete Township, commonly known as 24626 South Stoney Island, Crete, Illinois, County Board District Number 1. You're up again.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to mention that the applicant has notified staff that they were unable to attend today's public hearing. However, they have requested that the case be heard, should you elect to hear it today.
Motion?
Second.
Okay. So ZC 19053 takes place in Crete Township. The applicant is requesting a map amendment from A1 to R2A in order to divide the property in half. The existing A1 parcel is 2.25 acres with 330 feet of frontage, so it's sufficient for A1 standards. It lies in between two subdivisions, the Eastwood subdivision, which is zoned R2A and lies to the north, south, and west of the subject property, and then we have the Plum Creek, or Highlands subdivision, which is directly east, which is zoned R3. So in congruence with the land resource management plan, the subject parcel lies within the suburban community form, which requires that residential uses connect between subdivisions and avoid isolated development areas. So rezoning to the R2A would conform to the land resource management plan. If divided in half, each parcel would be 1.125 acres with 165 feet of lot frontage. Pursuant to the Illinois Plat Act, it would meet the exemption that required subdivision plats not being required when the sale or exchange of parcels or tracts of land existing before July 17, 1959, where no new streets or easements occur. It meets that exemption because the county recorder's office has a recorded deed from 1951 showing the same configuration of the subject parcel. The subject property is being used as residential, although it is zoned A1. It has a residence, a attached garage, and a swimming pool, and the other half of the lot is heavily wooded. So the applicant is looking to keep the residence on the southern parcel and divide off the northern parcel. Within a half-mile radius of the subject parcel, there are other residential zone districts, so E1, E2, R1, R2, R2A, R3, and also smaller A1 parcels, many of which are within the Will County Forest Preserve District. When you expand to a further mile radius, you get commercial within the village of Crete, you get estate residential, as well as industrial, the I-1 district within unincorporated Will County and the village of Crete. So within this property, the trend in development is more subdivision and residential. With that, of the various local state agencies that were notified, none objected. The village of Crete was notified as part of this notification process. They did not object to the rezoning, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the amendment. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have other business, request for refund fees from EMA Builders. Let's take this one. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for a roofing permit refund. The Will County Building Ordinance does not allow for staff to return money back to anybody. In fact, it's a long-standing policy, I guess, by the board that they do not refund building permit fees. So that's why it's before you today, is that it's up for board consideration because the department has no authority to do it once again. In this situation, the person that applied for this building permit ended up not going through with the project because they had indicated that the homeowner decided to break their contract with the roofing installer. So there was really no action on this permit, so that's why they're asking for their money back.
My question would be, this can't be the first time this has happened in Will County. Like, how often does this issue come up where somebody breaks a contract and the applicant comes for a refund? And have we ever given one?
I mean, because we're not authorized to give refunds, I can tell you that I haven't seen one of these before the committee, and I can't even think of one. I mean, it's either has not really happened at all, or I'm not remembering an occurrence where it has happened for a building permit.
You said they filled out the fee they filled out the paperwork and turned in their fee for the permit, but nobody from our staff ever went to the project, and then they broke the...
Really, no, the only work that was done on this was entering it into the system. So the roofing installer came in and applied for the permit, paid the fees, and then at a later date, at least they tell us that the homeowner broke the contract with them, so they weren't going forward with the project.
I'll make a motion to return their money.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, is if we haven't put I can understand not refunding fees when we put work into this, but in this case, if no work was put into it, why would we not give them the money back? Is there a reason that we have that policy other than to pay for the labor? Is there some other reason?
I mean, since I've worked here at the county, that's been the policy, is that building permit fees are not refundable, whether somebody did work on it or not. Somebody paid for the permit, it was entered the system, and, that's just something that the county hasn't done, but it's up to this committee what they want to do.
You don't notify them that it's a non-refundable fee when they apply?
Yep, building permit fees are not refundable.
Sorry, hold on, Julie, I said.
My concern is that if we do this, we might get an onslaught of these, because we don't really know. Most people probably see that it's non-refundable and they move on.
Yeah, it's possible, I don't want to speculate. I suppose it could be the contractor then, goes after the homeowner to get the fees paid, or I have no idea what happens on that side when this situation occurs, but I'm sure it does occur from time to time.
We've refunded fees in the past for different projects, like a special use permit for chickens. I remember we refunded that because we changed our ordinance and we allowed chickens. So we've refunded fees in the past, and I'd be in favor of this.
I mean, I would say that the difference here is that we didn't change anything with the chickens. We changed it, that makes sense, but we didn't change policy, and it's just, I get uncomfortable when you have a policy in place, and it's probably so people do not try to take advantage of the permitting process, and now we're going to say, never mind. But, there's anybody else?
I think we should give them the money back. It's only fair, and we didn't do anything. If we did something, this is a different story, but we didn't do anything. So what, are we going to be the tyrant that's going to take money from people? Is that what we want to be known as? I don't think so.
Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I should say, it's not like we didn't do anything. The permit was entered into the system, which means information is checked. We looked at contractors and make sure they're registered. So that type of office work was done. And with a roofing permit, there's really next to nothing on the permit fee for the actual review. So it's a minimal amount of work. That's why the fee is around $146 for all the work. So truth be told, the only work that really wasn't done on this was an inspection to see if it was done. But I mean, there was the normal amount of work that goes into processing a permit.
It's paperwork, and we're already paying somebody to be in the office that day. I don't know. I just feel like if they didn't do the project, how many of these do we have where people cancel their project? Do we even know?
That happens frequently.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Numbers?
I didn't realize that part happened for you.
I would say, even though they are already being paid, they're already being paid by the fees that we collected earlier. So just to be clear by that.
Don't our property taxes pay for some of this
Well,
stuff?
I mean, it's a budget, but I mean, this is a part of our budget.
Right, I mean, if they didn't really do much work at all,
Well,
there's
you
some
just said
paper
that
there.
we have
One person at a time, please. One person at a time. All right. Julie?
Thank you, Tyler. We need to consider the precedents this will set, and in addition to that, most companies, if they have good business practices, they secure a deposit from their customer So if he came and if this is the company and they applied for a permit, if they didn't get a non-refundable deposit from the customer, that's their policy and procedure. We shouldn't be paying for that. There is an expense for us to file the permit. I recently had some work done. I made sure I was going to have the job done, and before I went in and I filed for that permit. So I think you need to consider those items before you refund the money.
Thank you. Okay, I think David, I saw your light on earlier. No. All right, we're going to do a roll call vote on this one.
Tyler Markham?
No.
Mark Ferry?
Yes.
Steve Balich?
Yes.
Amanda Cook?
No.
Jacqueline Trainier?
No.
Rachel Ventura?
No.
Tom Weigel?
Yes. I'll be a no.
All right, so it did not pass. Next up, we have discussion on the Will County zoning ordinance to reflect the new Illinois state statutes enacted as Public Act 101-0027, recreational cannabis regulation and tax act. Everybody's new favorite topic. Colin?
Good morning. The problem is right now this discussion may be a little premature, mostly because one, there'll be a committee of the full meeting on Thursday regarding this topic, and two, there's going to be a trailer bill being introduced during the veto session in Springfield. So all of this may change. So hopefully, so we will see. But in the meantime, I'm here just to educate you as to what is going on in our offices, and letting you know what you can do as land use committee members. First of all, the statute does allow the counties to adopt rules and ordinances to govern the time, place, manner, and number of business establishments, which also includes the minimum distance limitations between existing other cannabis businesses and other locations it deems sensitive. So the statute specifically calls out colleges and universities. The medical marijuana statute calls out for public or private preschool or elementary or secondary school, daycare center, daycare home, group home daycare center, and part-day child care facility. And then, and regardless of all of that, but the statute for both on the recreational side and on the medical side prohibited in residential zoning districts. Let's see, what else? It also admonishes local governments that may not unreasonably restrict the time, place, and manner and number of businesses. So it becomes that aspect as well. If and when this does come before you, we will be looking at doing some minimal changes to the existing zoning ordinance. Since we do have medical cannabis, sorry, I can't call it marijuana, it's medical cannabis, our existing language, and kind of blending in the medical and the recreational into one as opposed to keeping them separate. So it will be just some changes to reflect both entities. And so that's what will be coming down the pipe.
Amanda?
Could you get that medical cannabis ordinance or zoning and send it to the committee so that we can look at it and think about some of the changes that we consider making should this come before the land use again?
Oh, sure. I should point out it's very, very simple. It is some items on the use chart where we say permitted in one district or special use in another district, and the definitions for them. That's it. That's how.
And then we were talking about like the distance from schools.
That is in part of the definition. It's also part of the state statute.
So we can have all of that.
Yes.
Just to kind of have as a reference point.
Absolutely.
Mr. Guzman?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank Colin. I know he's been working on this pretty hard, and along with the other staff at the Land Use Department. A couple of things about this legislation. It's set to take effect in January of 2020. Colin is correct that this is scheduled to be discussed at the Committee of the Whole on Thursday. At the Committee of Whole, I will be present, and I'm going to have a few words then, but I want to relay it here. And that is that land use staff is looking for some guidance, and it'll be coming up at the Committee of the Whole as to whether or not the county wants to allow this within the county, these sales. It's very important that be answered at the Committee of the Whole, because some guidance is needed as to getting this ordinance in an appropriate fashion that the whole county board can live with and deal with it. But it all becomes moot if the county decides they don't want it in here. Now, Colin stressed, made mention of this trailer bill. I have made contact with the General Assembly, some members down there, and was informed that yes, the trailer bill is coming down the pipe, and that's guaranteed it's going to happen, what I've been told. And they're going to clarify a few matters with regards to the current legislation. And as you're well aware, when new laws are passed, it's never perfect, there's issues and such. And there are with this one as well. There was debate, at least that I saw upon reading the bill, and it's not a small bill, that it was up to interpretation whether or not you could even ban the sale of this recreational marijuana. I was told that it was their intent to, yes, allow a ban. But when you read the current statute, I didn't get that interpretation. So that's going to be clarified amongst the laundry list of other items. But I wanted to stress that this, again, may or may not be relevant, may be moot, depending upon which way the full county board wants to go on this. I'll try to answer any questions you may have that I can.
My understanding from the agenda for Thursday is there are two presentations. There will be no vote, so.
Well, I know that they filed an amended agenda. There should be. And
I'm looking at it as of right this moment
I think
online.
Maura can answer that.
Yeah, so Matt is going to be talking first at our Committee of the Whole in regards to the legislation. I believe that's on the agenda of legislation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Just says new business, presentation cannabis legislation, presentation on cannabis health issues.
So
No resolution.
right. So
to come to the floor.
So the legislation portion is where Matt is going to speak about the various zoning ordinances that we would have to get in place. And I think one thing that maybe Matt didn't stress is that if the county is going to pass and allow the marijuana sales, we need to get these zoning ordinances in place by January 1st. Otherwise, it could turn into some sort of a free-for-all. And correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, if that's the wrong term.
No, you're sounding correct.
So Colin has been working on them and land use. And I think land use and the state's attorney's office is looking for some direction, as in, do we continue down the road of changing these zoning ordinances if we are going to allow the sales in the unincorporated? And if not, then as Matt said, the point becomes moot. Now, it's totally separate and apart from the decision as to whether or not a tax will be levied by the county on other places that allow the sale. That's not a decision that we, and correct me again, Matt, if I'm wrong, have to make before January 1st. We wouldn't even see any revenue from that until September of 2020. That decision has to be, if we do want to see revenue from that, and I'm getting a little bit in the weeds, so I apologize, but if we would need to make that decision by June 1st regarding the taxing. But as far as the land use portion, it is very important that, if we are going to do that, that we vote on the zoning ordinance changes by December. Right, Matt?
That's correct. Yeah, we want to get the legislation or the ordinance changed. It has to go to a public hearing if they're going to allow it, so there's time for it to go to a public hearing. we're looking at December latest, so we can get it done before January.
Yeah, so it sounds like we need to decide whether we're gonna allow it or not, like yesterday.
Yeah, that's the big.
That's what I got.
Well, and we're hoping that the committee of the whole, for those who haven't made up their mind, or for those who need more information, that, you know, can at least ask the questions and hopefully we can answer them. If those questions are still lingering after the committee of the whole, I know I'm more than willing to find the answers to any questions you might have, and I know the state's attorney's office is also willing to ferret out any, but I don't think we should rely on the trailer bill, you know, to fix all the problems. So I think we need to go forward with the bill as written, unless some big changes are made, it's passed and it becomes law immediately, you know, by the end of November.
And I think our point from a land use standpoint is that we need to probably vote on whether we're gonna allow it or not in November.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that needs to get moving so we can.
It could be the simultaneous December, but that's what the committee of the whole, I believe the state's attorney's office is
They're
hoping that.
requesting that we get that so we know what we need to do, if anything.
Yes, yes.
All right, now we're gonna Jackie, then Rachel.
I know this sounds kind of odd, but couldn't we go forward with an ordinance for where we would allow it to be sold and pass that ordinance and then just decide not to allow sales in unincorporated Will County? And I say that just because of the interest of time and because of what you alluded to, that the bill doesn't necessarily clearly state that you can opt out. So I'm just asking the question. I know it sounds odd, but it's because of what you said, that the bill, one interpretation could be that we could opt out, but the other interpretation could be that we can't. So it seems to me if somewhere down the line it becomes clear in the trailer bill that we don't get to opt out as a county, then we will already put the work in towards having the written ordinance about where we'd like it sold. And then let's say we vote to opt out and wait and see, and a year from now we decide, okay, we're going to opt back in. Well, now we've got the ordinance written. I don't know. I'm new to land use, so I'm just trying to understand how this all works.
I would think that your first decision is paramount. Do you want it or you don't? It's that simple. I mean, and if it comes up for debate that says that you can't do it, well then, you know, we have to readdress it then. But I think we need to decide, you know, as a group, do we want to have these sales in Will County? Virtual.
Okay, I've got 3 comments and probably questions for Colin. The first, I'm just going to err that I talked about this back in May when they passed it. I thought we should have been talking about it over the summer. So I am very irritated that we were told, oh no, there'll be plenty of time for that.
There's never.
So I'd like in the future for us to be a little more prudent about the time. The second thing is, I think the time makes a difference because of the budget. If we are taxing this, it needs to be in the budget. It needs to be passed in the budget so there's appropriations so that if there's revenue generated, it can be spent somewhere. So I do think that there's a time factor. So the third thing, and this is going to be maybe more for Colin, is I understand what the state's attorney is saying about, you know, do we want it or do we not want it? But there's lots of times we discuss things as a what if. And so I don't see any harm in talking about if we pass this, because if we don't pass it, it goes away, it doesn't matter. So we could have a brief discussion now what these zoning changes could look like right now and be ready next month if we need to, or if we have to have the executive committee put this on the agenda as a whole and pass after the Thursday. So I think this is a good time for us to take a moment to discuss with Colin what some of these look like. So you were saying currently medical cannabis cannot be prohibited around schools and residential areas. So does that mean that industrial, agriculture, and commercial would be available for both medical and recreational?
Yes.
Okay. What are some other things that you would be suggesting that we change in this ordinance if we were to pass it?
There are, so the medical marijuana has two types of uses. One is the cultivation, and the other is the distribution. And there is, in the recreational side, there are 2 types of cultivation. There's the basically the wholesale type of cultivation, and another type of cultivation they call craft growers. So the smaller independent ones, and they're limited to in size. They top out at 14,000 square foot under canopy for the crop. And then there's also the distribution under the recreational. And then there are two other types of uses identified in, three I should say. There are three, one of which is called transportation organizations, but that's not a land use, that's just transporting the product from the cultivation to the distribution. The two that are land uses are what they call cannabis infusing organizations and cannabis processing organizations. And so those would also have to be added into our ordinance.
Okay, can you discuss what those two, I don't know what confused, I mean, like.
Yeah, me neither.
What are we talking about?
Basically, let's see, the definition of an infuser is a facility operated by an organization or business that is licensed by the Department of Agriculture to directly incorporate cannabis or cannabis concentrate into a product formulation to produce a cannabis-infused product.
The brand.
Gummy bear.
Okay, I got it.
And then the processing organization is a facility operated by an organization or business licensed by agriculture to either extract constituent chemicals or compounds, produce cannabis concentrate, or incorporate cannabis or cannabis concentrate into product formulation to produce a cannabis product.
So both of those things would need to be in some type of industrial commercial zone area anyway, but the nature of any processing center would be in that any
Not going to be residential.
bakery type of thing would be.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so that wouldn't necessarily affect our zoning just because of the type of product, it's what they're doing.
Because our, okay, so our current ordinance has on the medical marijuana side, has the distribution and the cultivation side. These other uses, we don't have anything that's consistent with that. So our little draft suggests keeping it similar to a dispensing organization. Primarily because under statute, it does allow for all of these uses to be in the same space. So it becomes even more problematic.
So why aren't we, I mean, once it becomes a legal substance, why aren't we treating it the same way we would another product? Like, I mean, alcohol, for example, we don't necessarily say you can't distill alcohol within so many feet of a school. I mean, is there a reason that we would keep it to the medical cannabis ordinance and not create its own, or actually grandfathered into our current ordinance, it's just as a product?
That's up to you.
Okay, so that's an option then.
We're going to go to Steve really quick. Steve?
Yeah, I don't know whether the county's gonna say it's okay or not. We'll have to see how that goes, but, we're talking about this like it's a big gold mine, and I'm against any kind of tax on it. I think that the people of Illinois already got 29 new taxes. They gotta pay tax on cigarettes and booze and go down the list, gas, everything. They're paying too much money already. So why, if we're gonna do this, we gotta get it, we should not be taxing it. That's the bottom line. Because I think it's a shame that every time you turn around, that somebody, whether it's the county or a city or the state or the federal government, everybody's taxing. So this has got to be part of the discussion. That if we're not going to tax it, how's everybody feel? But I think it's wrong. We should not be taxing everything. The poor people can't afford it.
This committee doesn't have that, so we're Tom?
Question for Matt about the tax. If we say vote not to have retail sales in the county unincorporated, could we still tax the marijuana that's at other locations?
even in the municipal rates?
It's partial. I don't think it's fully as what you normally could. There's a lot of different taxes at play in this. There's state taxes, there's local taxes. So I couldn't answer that fully without having to go into and looking at the specific taxes, how it's set up.
Any members, anything else?
I want to get back to the zoning part of this. One of my concerns, just as on the liquor ordinance or liquor licenses, my concern is that we have a high concentration of the retail outlets in a particular area. And I'm going to talk about specifically District 2. I do think discussion is a little premature, so I was going to talk to Amanda. But you know, in my district, especially on the eastern end of my district, the Frankfurt, Tinley Park, or Frankfurt Township portion, you know, we sit on that Cook County border, we're off I-80, we're on Harlem Avenue, we have a lot of commercial and industrial roads that go through our community, all places that would be eligible to put this. I see the city of Chicago, I see Mayor Lightfoot actually set up zones to where things could go. Now I know there are home rule and all different rules for Chicago, but what I would like to have land use take a look at is whether we can set up zones, and so there's only so many retail outlets in a zone. I realize it can be a little done by population, so you know it's not going to be the same in my Frankfurt Township portion of my district as it is in Manhattan. But you know, and I'd like to know if we can limit, like what liquor licenses, whether we can limit the amount of retail outlets. That would be a question for Matt. But if land use could maybe look at, can you start working on what a zone kind of area would look like? I agree with Rachel. We should work on this as we go along, and not wait for the last minute. So that's the only comments I want to make. I'm concerned about concentration of retail, recreational cannabis outlets. You know, I mean, I can see 20 of them on Harlem Avenue, you know, where I'm at. So we don't want that. So I just want to see how we can maybe restrict.
Now, as we've discussed, I know that Colin has put quite a bit of work into this thus far, just researching, getting to understand the issue at hand. But I think from a departmental standpoint, management standpoint of departmental resources, I think it's imperative that first we have a decision by the board as the direction we're going to go before we expend a lot of resources in going in a particular path. And there's a lot of things we need to do, but I just, for discussion purposes on Thursday, I think I appreciate that again, we get a decision by the board, and then we go and you expend our resources depending upon that decision.
Can we keep the side conversations kind of here? You have something else, Mr. Guzman?
Yeah, if I could. I think I can answer one of the questions Mr. Muse asked a moment ago about these zones. I don't think that's allowed here. I'm looking at the statute now, and there is a provision that's entitled restricted cannabis zones, but those appear to apply only to a municipality, and those municipalities with a population of over 500,000. And essentially what you do, I'm going to give this paraphrase in a nutshell, I've only read this a few times in the text statute, that is you have to put it to a referendum and it has to be voted on. So I don't think that would be applicable here. So I just wanted to point that out. I know when you said that, it rang a bell.
All right, we're going to go Amanda and Jackie on the way.
I do agree with Mr. Mooses that we need to consider density, but I believe that this will be a special use like it is for liquor licenses, and so that would allow the board to control the density to some extent and the location and decide if it is an inappropriate place. So I think that we should stick with that special use process.
Jackie?
I've already sent one thing to our state senators, and I think it made it to the two primary supporters of the bill that passed in Springfield. Maybe this is something else we should send, because I think I agree with you, Jim. I know. And you've been so quiet.
I've been really quiet today.
Yes, you have. I was going to comment on that. But I do think density is an issue with this. I mean, I'd like to see it evenly spaced. I'm in favor of it. At least I think I am at this point. mind, I need more information like most people on here. And I don't think we're gonna get everything we need on Thursday, and even if we do, we're not voting on it on Thursday, so. But I would definitely like to talk to our legislators about some sort of density thing. I think that's a really good idea. And in your case, Jim, where you live, because you are right there on the border of Cook County, because they are allowed to do that, hopefully at least on that side of the road, you're not gonna see one in every single mom and pop shop, hopefully.
Amanda makes a good point. It is a special use.
I'm gonna like Alan, I think the influence might be.
Okay, for a little clarification, the statute does have some, we call it regulations regarding density. What they have done is put a limit to the number of licenses they're planning on issuing, and there is a minimum, there's a distance between each, minimum distance between each of these licenses.
Thank you.
Do you know what it is?
1,500 feet.
Yeah, I was under the impression, maybe Matt can clarify this too, that we could stay in, meaning not opt out, but we set the amount of licenses for each of the things. We theoretically, I thought, can set it for 0 initially while we get everything else dealt with, so we're not rushed in the next month or two to make all the decisions on zoning and stuff. We just said, just like in liquor licenses, we set the amount at 0 to start, we stay in, we don't opt out, and then it gives us time to create all of the land use stuff we do, and then we set the number of. I don't know if that's true.
The one part I'm thinking about and have a little issue with is setting it at 0. And I'll tell you why. It's because the provision that when I was reading this initially brought to light to me, thinking, well, we can't even ban this at all. It's that provision that talks about, give me 1 second. No unit of local government may unreasonably restrict the time, place, manner, and number of cannabis business establishment operations authorized by this act. So to me, if you look at it and setting it at 0, how more unreasonable can you be if you're saying you can allow it, but you're not going to have any?
Well, we could set a time limit though and say we're sitting at 0 until March 1st, until we get our stuff together. That's not unreasonable. That's giving us time to get all our land use issues squared away before we start, people start coming.
I think more language would be trained.
That moratorium, other language. It's called a moratorium. What is the time specific?
Okay.
David?
Yes, just 2 points I'd like to make is, number one, with the special use permit process, there's specific criteria within the zoning ordinances for decision-making that goes for the special use permit, and that does not take into account existing other special uses in the area with a particular use. So it may not be an appropriate avenue to regulate the density through the special use process. And also, too, I would just caution the members that, if the county does decide that they're going to authorize this, do not create a process that may have some of the same issues that we've had with zoning and the liquor process, where you have a dual process concurrently, which causes confusion and otherwise. So if the county chooses, for example, if they can, regulate through a licensing process, you may not want to try to intertwine the special use permit process into and have 2 approvals. Maybe just go through a licensing process. But just something for thought is, again, trying not to create a similar process that we have as the liquor, where there might be some confusion.
Thank you, David. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is I don't want to repeat what we've done with the alcohol. I think that it's a cumbersome process. I also think, to your point about the density, I'm not sure if the special use is the best way to go. But again, if it's a legal product, we don't say that you can't sell cigarettes every 1,500 feet. So that's in there, that's fine, but if there's a gas station on one corner and a gas station on another corner, and they're selling cigarettes, and some of them are selling beer and alcohol, why would we do that here? So, I guess that goes to the pass it, don't pass it, but I am more interested in either 2 solutions, I suppose, is the special use permits and how that would work. so that we don't have those hiccups that David talked about. But then, or having it allowed based in zonings, and that's what we talked about changing the alcohol to, where if it's going to be commercial or agricultural or industrial, you know, those are the only ones that we would allow it in. So I don't know, Colin, have you prepared some of that, or are you still looking for direction from us so that you know?
Yeah, I've got some draft language that's sitting on my computer that can be available, but I'd rather not until we wait till after Thursday. Let's see what kind of direction we go.
Just to comment on what Matt said regarding the actual language of the current law that is in place. Matt, would you say that in this scenario that the law as it reads right now in your interpretation is that if you opt in, you then have to follow sort of that language in the statute which says that you can't, I mean, what he was saying, you can't set the license at 0 because that then prohibits people from being able to get the license. So Matt, is that your reading of it?
Yeah, just on as I was getting to that point earlier, I think that's that's my interpretation of it by reading that, because I mean, just on its facial reading, just reading on its facial what it says, I think that it's, you know, and our court could look at that and say that's an unreasonable limitation by putting it at 0. I think you set the number if you want to, or whatever it is, and like Colin mentioned earlier, pass a resolution and place a moratorium on it. But I think you're right, yes.
And everything that I've heard regarding the legislative intent was that the legislative intent was to allow communities to opt out. However, that being said, you know, it's kind of ambiguous. So if you opt in, you then, you know, are kind of at the state's, you have to go by what the state says in their law.
So I have a question, 2 things on the licensing. One, does the state set a max of licenses, or is there a max per county, city?
There are maximums set out in the statute. What they are, I don't know.
Okay.
I can't remember all the details, but I know that they have set out in their maximums for the licenses as well as particular types of licenses.
For the entire state?
Yes. And
not specific to our county?
Correct. And
so it's first come, first served?
They're going to different geographical locations, too, is my understanding.
Yes.
Is that going to be presented to us on Thursday then?
You'd have to talk to the legislatures.
Okay, Maura, can we make sure that that's, somebody presents to us the maximum licenses in the state, what geographical areas or what limitations there are on those? Because if it's a first come, first served, I don't think Jim's going to have to worry about them all being on our boulevard.
I can look into it. I'm not sure how much information I'll be able to get before Thursday.
Okay.
But, you know, that's something that I can definitely ask. I highly doubt, though, it's first come, first serve. You know, it's,
well, there's there's like, yeah.
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
So the other thing I want to say about licenses, and I'll bring this up again on Thursday, the committee of the whole, is if the county, and maybe Matt, you can talk to this, if we have some type of ordinance, we get to decide how the licenses are approved here, I would like to see some types of priority points for people who are past incarcerated for cannabis, people of color, people under the poverty line, so that they have a chance to benefit off of this, where their communities have been negatively affected in large percentages, versus maybe growers of medical cannabis, they're already set up for that, they're already making money off of it. It's easy for them to maybe walk in the door and have a successful business. So I'd like to see some type of ordinance here in the county, if we're allowed.
Well, let me speak to that, because I think I read some of that in here and reading about it. Again, I don't remember, because I read this some time ago, that there already is there are some guidelines in there in regards to individuals who you precisely describe being given points or giving preferential treatment, for lack of a better term, with communities that have been negatively affected, individuals that may have had these type of charges placed against them, where they are given those more points than another person who wouldn't have those things. So a lot of that's addressed already in the statute. Yeah, I just want to read about that. In fact, if they even use some of that, there's even provisions in this statute that talk about funding, that the
there's grants or something
Yeah,
about
there's
it, and I would like
certain
to
grants
see that as well, but since we don't know, we'll talk about that at finance.
Yeah.
Calvin, do you have something else?
Yes, as for the number of licenses, for cultivation centers, it's limited to 30 statewide. For craft growers, it's limited to 100 statewide. For infusing organizations, it is limited to 40 statewide. I do not have a number for processing organizations. And for dispensing organizations, I am not entirely sure, but I think it's about 50 for the Chicagoland area. Which
So not very many,
Right.
for the state, they're not kind of a density issue then, that's kind of a good point.
No, I could be, my note is a little iffy on that one, but as for the geographic area, the Chicagoland area includes all of the main key 7 counties, including Kendall, but they also add New Grundy and DeKalb. So all of those counties are part of that Chicagoland area, and that's how they'll distribute the licenses accordingly.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to remind everybody, because a vast majority of county board members do not live in the unincorporated areas, that this is, what we're discussing is specific to the unincorporated areas. So you need to consider the fact of the people who live in those areas and what their opinions might be on this as well. Because if you live in a municipality and your municipality has already opted out, and there are a lot in Will County that have opted out, you need to take that into consideration, who you're impacting by this, because it would be those in the unincorporated areas of Will County.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice. All right, thank you. So it sounds like Thursday's going to be a lot of fun. Next up, we have reports, communications, and correspondence. The only thing I have, and I think Jim blocked, was there's miscommunication on my end where he requested that digital signs versus dynamic signs. I was going to ask him what exactly. So, but we're going to talk about the signs again, but I'm going to wait till next month and ask Jim if he can stick around. So I'm not sure exactly what he was looking for us to look at, and I just saw him run downstairs. So that's all I have. Committee members. Anything? David is outside. David's waving, he's good to go. Anything else? Public comment? Going once, public comment. Public comment. All right, scared them all the way too. We don't need executive session. That's why you make the big bucks. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Been moved and seconded, all in favor, signify by aye. Aye. Our next meeting is November 12th in this room.